Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm Chris Love.
And I'm Jane Mackey. US Sailing is supporting college sailing coverage through this Chalk Talk series for the 2012 spring season. Now, if you like what you see here and you want to continue seeing more college sailing coverage, one way you can show your support for US Sailing is by going online and signing up for a US Sailing College membership. We saw that we had over 600 views on this Chalk Talk series last week. If we had just half of those people sign up for a US Sailing College membership, we'd be almost at our goal of 500 memberships by nationals. Well, we're over a fifth of the way there right now, and there are lots of teams in the running to get their team outfitted by Sperry by having the most US Sailing College memberships by nationals.
Two interconference regattas this past weekend just loaded with teams who qualified for co-ed semifinals. Great chance to practice. The first is the Thompson Trophy at U.S. Coast Guard Academy. 18 teams and 18 races as Yale wins the Thompson Trophy by 18 points over Hobart in second and MIT in third. And so Jane picks up the point here, and that brings the score to 7-2. Just furthering my theory that she cheats with the help of the Yale sailing team.
Chris, I can't help it if Yale's doing really well. I will continue to pick up these prediction points. Hopefully they keep on winning. So moving on to the next interconference regatta of the weekend, it's the Admiral's Cup at KP. They had 19 different teams there, 19 races sailed in 3 different divisions, so a laser included here as well. It was a really good regatta. Charleston wins by 29 points over Stanford, with Georgetown coming in right behind. Chris and I made predictions on Stanford and Georgetown, so we don't pick up any prediction points here. Thanks to Chris Gassiorek for the video.
Big weekend for women's sailing as 5 of the 6 championships this weekend were for the Sperry Topsider women's semifinals and finals to be held here in Austin, Texas. Starting it off with Mesa. Now, it was supposed to be the top 2 teams going to finals and the next 5 teams going to semifinals. But as you hear about in a few minutes, the Southeast District came up a little short on their championship roster. And so by rule, their berth gets awarded to the next eligible team. And since Mesa had the most teams left over after the original berths were calculated, they pick up the extra berth. Complicated, but believe me, it makes sense. And so, we've got Georgetown and Navy going directly to finals after great performances on the water. St. Mary's, Cornell, Hobart, ODU, and Washington College fill out places 3 through 7, and Columbia gets a nice bonus this week, finishing in 8th and also qualifying for semifinals.
I think team racing has really helped with like boat handling, and because it's so complex and there's so many different things going on, it's nice to come out here and fleet race, and like it's just a little bit more simple. But it was fun conditions yesterday. My crew Rebecca and I have been sailing together for a really long time, and we can handle the shifts pretty well together.
Thanks to Zach Runcie for the photo and the interview with Sydney Bolger, and thanks to Daniel Lochner for the race videos.
Moving on to NISA Women's Champs this weekend, the one I've been waiting for. It's one of the most stacked competitive districts for women's sailing. We gave a bit of a preview on it last weekend. We weren't sure how BC was going to go with Annie coming back into the women's racing this weekend. Chris thought BC would take it away, and he was right. They win by 60 points, winning both divisions. Annie killing it on Saturday with mostly first and second, some lower places towards the end of the day. So 60 points back in second place. Also taking a finals berth to nationals is Yale, which is great for those girls. They've been doing well all season. And the Conn College Camels. Now, we actually forgot to mention them last weekend as being even a potential in our predictions. Sorry, Con, we think you're great. You obviously showed us this weekend. I think it was just with all of the different regattas going on, all the different teams qualifying, we somehow overlooked you guys, so congratulations there. Right behind them for the last semi spots are Dartmouth, URI, Harvard, all making it through to the semis. Thanks to Yale Sailing for the great video.
The Pacific Coast Conference had a nice weekend in Hawaii, sailing their women's championships for 2 berths to semifinals and 1 to finals. Stanford takes the win and the championship. Hawaii and USC round out the podium and are headed to semifinals.
Next up, we take a look at the SASA Women's Champs sailed at Clemson. It was a small regatta, just 5 teams, and we actually have a correction to make here. Last week we were talking about there being 3 spots awarded for finals and semifinals, but actually there's only 2. So both of these were awarded this weekend. USF taking the championship and going straight through to finals, and Eckerd winning a tiebreaker against Charleston. So Charleston will not even be getting a shot at semifinals, no chance of nationals at all, which is the first time in quite some time. This caught us off guard with our predictions, and I'm sure it caught them off guard too.
Here in Austin, CISA had its women's champs this weekend, but as we said earlier, only 4 teams compete. They needed 5 to keep their 1 semifinals berth and 1 finals berth. They lose the semifinals, and so UT, the University of Texas, takes a championship and a trip to nationals at home. Thanks to Kate Taylor for the video from the weekend.
At Western Washington, this weekend we had the Nwixa Co-Ed Champs. Small regatta again with just 5 teams here, 2 spots for semi-finals. University of Washington takes the first spot. Congratulations to Oregon coming in second for the second spot to semi-finals. These are 2 teams we'll definitely have to be watching in the upcoming weekends.
Well, Jane, we both made a few mistakes with our predictions this week. Con, obviously, Oregon coming through, and Charleston getting bumped from SASA. So that's going to keep the score at 7-2, and I'm looking forward to my big comeback coming up soon.
The Sail One Design team race rankings are updated this week. Head over to sailOneDesign.com to see the rankings and read the coaches' comments. No doubt this will all have to be updated after a full weekend of team racing this weekend.
And now the 6th segment of our 7-part series, Better Know a District. And this week we meet MCSA. We're happy to have with us today the MCSA Conference Commissioner, Dave Elsmo.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
So give us a little bit of insight. Talk about what schools are in your district and what states that encompasses.
The MC is actually, I think, the 2nd largest geographic district. We've got, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, northern Michigan. It really kind of is. It's a huge, huge district. And as far as the teams go, we've got what was basically the Big 12, and then we've got all sorts of different community colleges, smaller colleges. You got Notre Dame, you got Robert Morris in Chicago. There's a bunch of teams in Chicagoland area. So it's a pretty healthy demographic. I mean, you've got the deep north, but also you've got Indiana and Notre Dame and things like that. So it's a good group of sailors.
Still, you mentioned the geographic area. That must present a challenge. I know Wisconsin has been out east several times this season, but even getting from one venue to another within the Midwest must be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I sailed for the University of Minnesota. Their shortest drive to an event is 4 hours. And you got to consider that if they have to sail like co-ed qualifiers in Michigan, that's a 12 to 13 hour drive. Wisconsin, everything for us is relatively close, but we have teams that have to cross the entire Midwest to get to events every weekend. So it's a lot of travel time. These kids spend huge sums of time in cars, and for us, we've been sending many of our A teams have been going out to the East Coast almost every weekend. I think 7 weekends in a row. That's 13 to 18 hours of driving every weekend. These guys get in the car Thursday night and drive through to go out and race in Mesa and things like that. So it's a lot of travel. No flying. We might fly in for semis, but we'll see.
That is obviously a big commitment for anybody who's taking on that challenge. What is it about sailing in the Midwest that, because you're not the only district that deals with that challenge, but you are one of the strongest districts right now that's not on a coast. What keeps these kids so dedicated?
Well, this whole entire conference is a student-led conference. The only varsity team that we have is a very recent team to the MCSA conference, which is Robert Morris. They hooked in with the Columbia Yacht Club and are building themselves as a team. But what makes, I think, the Midwest such a strong power for keeping kids sailing, but not just sailing inside of college, outside of it, is that it's all student-led organizations. Even the University of Wisconsin team is all run by students. They do the budgets, they do the travel requests, they organize with their schools for the marketing stuff, they fundraise all on their own letter campaigns, and having that sort of buy-in to the actual program itself is, I think, in a very large way what makes some of our sailors not just great sailors themselves, but also really good business individuals once they leave college and get into the real world, and then hopefully populate sailing outside of college.
So you've got semifinals coming up. You've got another qualifier this weekend.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll be seeing you down here in Austin soon.
I sure hope so. Don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but I'm feeling good about it.
All right. Well, best of luck. Sail fast.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Looking ahead to this weekend, we have but a single interconference regatta, the George E. Morris, held at Boston University. Now you can see most of the roster here is the NISA teams, and most of these teams have a squad over at New England Team Race Champs this weekend. So this will be a nice opportunity to see some new up-and-coming sailors, some new faces that probably don't get much of a chance to sail interconference regattas. Also note the out-of-district teams, Western Washington coming all the way from the West Coast, Eckerd coming up from Florida, and Columbia just adding themselves late after finding out that they qualified for semifinals. For predictions this week, I just don't know who to pick. My guess is the winner is going to be a very deep NISA team who's able to send their fourth and fifth best skippers to this regatta while their other guys sail at the Team Race Champs. But without knowing who's on the roster for each team, this is going to be just too difficult. So I think this week I'm going to abstain from predicting for the interconference.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. This is a tough one. In an effort to not look stupid by picking a team without really knowing who they're going to be sending to this regatta, let's just sit this one out and refocus into the championships for qualifying for nationals this weekend. We've got a lot of sailing going on for qualifying for nationals. Lots of team racing, some co-ed and some women's as well. The co-ed champs for PCCSC are sailed at UC Santa Barbara this weekend for 4 spots to semifinals. We're expecting Stanford to take the win here. They've been generally unbeatable on the West Coast and doing really well in general, 4th in the rankings last week overall. Next up, Hawaii, UC Santa Barbara at home, and USC, we're expecting to take the 3 other spots to semifinals.
Jane, I would normally agree with that assessment, but given the huge lead that you have in our prediction contest, I think I'm going to roll the dice a little bit here, pray for big win, and hope that UC Irvine can come through and repeat the awesome performance they had at St. Francis Intersectional. So I'm taking Stanford, Hawaii, UC Santa Barbara, and UC Irvine. And next is the MCSA Team Race Champs at Wisconsin. Now I think Wisconsin at home here is pretty much a shoo-in for the win. These guys are remarkably good team racers despite the little practice they get throughout the year. So I think they're going to take the win. For that second spot, it's going to be close. I'm excited to see what happens when you put Michigan and Minnesota against each other. Now Michigan is bringing back their team racing squad from last year. They really didn't lose anybody, and they're very solid on execution. But Minnesota is generally a faster team. And they've got Cappy Capper on their side, veteran ICSA coach, who's going to be teaching them a thing or two about team racing.
I'm going to agree with Wisconsin for the first spot here and go with Michigan with the chemistry and the experience for the second spot here.
All right, well, I'm going to go against you again. I'm taking Wisconsin and Minnesota, looking for that second spot at Nationals.
The NISA Team Race Champs will be sailed at MIT this weekend for 3 spots to Nationals. We'll be expecting some configuration of Yale, BC, and Roger Williams to make up that top 3. But it should be interesting, especially in a stacked competitive district like NISA. Any team could have a great regatta and shake things up. We'll be watching top players like Brown, Harvard, Tufts, and Dartmouth also. Even BU, MIT, and Cohen will be taking wins away from the top group.
Well, look, anything can happen at New England Team Race Champs. We've definitely seen upsets here before, but I think I'm going to play it safe and stick with those 3 picks as well. Moving on to Northwest Intercollegiate Sailing Women's Championship for 1 semifinals berth and 1 finals berth. Sailed at Washington, and I think the teams to beat here are going to be University of Washington and Western Washington. We hear that Portland State also has some talent in A Division, but I don't think that they're going to be able to keep up with the other 2 overall.
Chris, based on the district intel, I'm going to also have to agree with those picks. Now, moving on to the US Sailing College Sailor of the Week.
Hobart William Smith's team of Sam Bluen and Catherine Pello won A Division at the Thompson Trophy in commanding fashion despite trying conditions. The duo were incredibly consistent throughout the weekend in varied conditions, averaging just over a 4.5 finish for the regatta, only 2 races outside the single digits. They had the low point score of the regatta, which helped their team to a 2nd place finish overall. Well done. Over on the women's side, it's BC's Annie Hager and Laura McKenna for one of the most dominating performances in college sailing this year. The pair won 8 out of the first 9 races in A Division at NISA Women's, a regatta filled with some of the very best talent in women's college sailing. Over 17 races, they averaged only 2.3 points per race and finished 51 points ahead of the 2nd place Yale team. Combine that with their teammates' B Division win, and the Eagles easily took the championship and the berth to Nationals finals here in Austin.
So thanks for watching. With just over a month left to Nationals, get on over to ussailing.org/college and sign up for your membership today.
See you next week.